Thank you. Welcome everyone to this session where we are having Dr. Gumbe from, I use the old name from Faculty of Commerce, but he's going to tell us the new title of the faculty.
I'll do that.
He's going to talk to us about creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Dr. Gumbe is a lecturer in the area of entrepreneurship. He is a former dean of the faculty. So today he is our expert in this particular area. Thank you so much, Dr. Gumbe, for making time to talk to us. Here we have mostly we have interns from the Innovation Hub. They have most of them are students or graduate students, or some of them are still undergraduates. But the common thing for them is that they have innovations that they have, and they've given what we call the hub status, where they get into the innovation hub. The idea of the innovation hub is to develop products and services that the university, together with the innovators, can commercialize and make into usable products that the country can benefit from. So most of the participants are innovators, but we also have members of the university staff. We have professors, we have doctors from around from different faculties of the university, and they also come from different disciplines. But as I said, the idea and the common thing for all of them is that we are looking at innovations within the Education 5.0 programs, and such that they can we can develop products and services as part of the university and then commercialize them. So from our interns, we are anticipating that some of them will take the products and become entrepreneurs. So that is why we require your expertise in that particular area. Without much ado, I hand over to Doc for the presentation. You can just begin with telling us your background and your expertise, and then you can get into the presentation. Thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you very much, convener, Dr. Namo, for inviting me to this important discussion. My name is, has been said by Dr. Namo, is Samuel Gumbe, Dr. Gumbe. I am a former dean of the Faculty of Commerce, but now the faculty is now referred to as the Faculty of Management Sciences and Economics. We rebranded in line with 5.0. So now I'm actually in the Department of Business and Enterprise Management, which was formerly known as the Business Studies Department. I'm a senior lecturer there, and I've been with the university. I think this is my 15th year, 15th year. But prior to that, I was actually employed by the Small Enterprises Development Corporation as a development manager, and then later project manager. The difference between project manager and development manager is that development manager, you are focusing on breeding entrepreneurs and nurturing entrepreneurs. Project manager is where you start to finance small enterprises. So I have experience in entrepreneurship, nurturing entrepreneurship, and also in funding and financing small enterprises. So that's my experience. I spent 15 years at SETCO. So it's almost like 15 years, 30 years of my life divided into two. One life in SETCO and then the other life with the University of Zimbabwe. Yes, I have published very widely in, I think I've about 20 or so publications, mainly in entrepreneurship. My thesis was also on entrepreneurship, but a particular brand of entrepreneurship referred to as corporate entrepreneurship. It's an area of interest. I enjoy it. So when I was invited to this presentation, I was very happy because it's an area that I truly believe in, that it is the future of any economy, and particularly for us developing economies, developed economies, obviously, they benefited from entrepreneurship, because without entrepreneurship, they would not be where they are. And in most cases, when we talk about entrepreneurship, we look at it as if it's something that is new, something that is only for a particular group of people, i.e. small people who are coming up, or those who those who are not employed, this kind of things, So we have given it a name, or we have attached some element of, where we try to separate large corporates from small enterprises, and we then start to believe that entrepreneurship is only found in small businesses or in startups. This phenomenon of entrepreneurship is found in all forms of enterprises, because it's the only way that businesses can actually survive. Without entrepreneurship, businesses will not survive. Or if they survive, it will be just survival, not growth, because entrepreneurship actually drives growth. Entrepreneurship drives competitiveness, etc. So in my presentation, these are the kind of things that I've actually looked at, and as we discuss, you'll notice that, we all can be entrepreneurs if we wanted. We might just take different routes to entrepreneurship, but we can be entrepreneurs. So thanks very much. I can now share my screen, and we have our discussion. The way I've looked at this is I've actually looked at it from not from a lecture perspective, but from what's happening now? Right. So that's the title of my presentation, entrepreneurship and innovation. So it's not like a lecture, it's going to be a discussion. I'll be speaking to the slides just to try and explain, but it's not a lecture. So yeah, if you want to take notes, you can take notes, but really I'm looking at it as a discussion. Right. We'll start by looking at the entrepreneur, the term that we always hear, entrepreneur, and at times we want to know who an entrepreneur is. The truth is there's no one standard definition of an entrepreneur. You find that there are so many definitions of an entrepreneur. I've just picked out two, but there are as many as the number of authors we've actually written on entrepreneurship. They all come up with their own definitions. For instance, if you look at Rich and Peters cited from 2018, they say an entrepreneur is one who brings resources, labor, and other assets into combinations that make their value greater than before, and also one who introduces changes, innovations, and a new order. So you'll notice that it talks about bringing in resources, talking about labor. And when you talk about resources, we're talking about funding, finances, and any other resources that one might actually bring. But the thrust, you'll notice, it's all about growth, that you want to create value. So in entrepreneurship, we are always talking about growth. We are always talking about creating value, and our value in entrepreneurship will take different dimensions. It can be value in terms of profit. It can be value in terms of shareholder wealth, growth of shareholders. It could actually be growth in terms of market share, expanding into new markets, building your market share. We'll consider that as growth, right? We also have Schumpeter. I mean, this is the gentleman really who introduced the concept of entrepreneurship, who defines it as someone who innovates a process or a product for the first time, opens up new sources of raw materials or factors of production, and creates a new industrial structure. Essentially, Schumpeter viewed entrepreneurship is a process of innovating. And for him, he was actually saying you can innovate processes and you can also innovate products, or you can actually innovate both. So when we talk about processes, we're actually looking at those who are providing services, the way we provide our services, the kind of technology that we use in providing a service, or the steps that we follow in providing a particular service, or steps that we follow in organizations, when you are providing accounting services, when you are providing medical services, whatever service you are providing, but you can innovate the processes, the steps that one actually follows. Today, we talk about business process reengineering. It's actually part of the innovations, because what this business process reengineering is actually doing is just to try and improve the processes of delivering value to our customers, value to our clients, value to, when you talk about clients, you can actually have internal clients. So we could look at if you're using the UZ example, the examinations office, they provide value or service to the various departments. So they could look at how best they can actually improve their services. So that would be innovation when it comes to examinations. We also have this a system that we are using now, ICTs. In the past, we would actually meet physically and have discussions. If we had not adopted ICTs, it means that this meeting would actually not have taken place. So we have innovated in that regard. So it's still innovation. So that's innovating processes. At times, we can also innovate products, the actual tangibles that we deliver to customers, actual tangible tools that we deliver to our clients. So Schumpeter was actually saying, yes, you can innovate both processes and services. And then obviously you have products and services. Or we could actually be looking at ways of opening up new sources of raw materials. Just hold on, there's somebody who... Okay. So that's the way he was actually looking at it, right? Right. Then when we look at these definitions, you will notice that there's a common thread that is coming up from those definitions of entrepreneurship. And I think this is the most important part for our discussion, because the other part sounds like a lecture, but this is the most important part of our. So entrepreneurship is about capital investment. So we cannot talk about entrepreneurship if there's no capital investment. We have to invest in entrepreneurship, and this is basically what the UZ is actually done. When you talk about your innovation hub, it's an investment that is actually been made, and the teaching that will go through, that will take place in that hub, the various interactions that will take place, that's part of the capital investment. And this investment for entrepreneurship, we're actually saying that capital investment must actually yield growth or accumulation. In our case, we are talking about growth. So the growth that we want to see, particularly if we are going to measure the success of the innovation hub, would be the number of people who have actually set up ventures, the number of graduates from our center who are going to go in and start businesses or start ventures. That's how we look at our growth. But with all investments, we should acknowledge that there is inherent risk. So there's also the chances that we can fail. So we must accept it. It's part of entrepreneurship that, yes, of all the investments that we'll make, some might actually yield benefits, might yield growth, but in some cases, we might have other instances where we might actually not have success. And it's accepted. The only thing really with risk is then how do we manage the risk? It's all about minimizing the chances of failure. That's what we have to look at, ways of minimizing the chances of failure. And I'm happy and very glad that the Innovation Hub, that's what it's actually looking at, minimizing the risk of failure through the various interactions, teaching, etc., that will actually take place, inviting various people, guests to come in and share their experiences. Those are the ways of minimizing failure. But there is always inherent risk. When we look at the ventures themselves, going out of UZ, we are saying when these graduates finally graduate, we will definitely have to, they will receive funding to start the ventures. And obviously, when you start the venture, you are now in the real world where you are competing. So you might actually find that there's also that risk of failure. So, but what is it that we should do? We have to look at risk mitigation. And I think these are some of the things that you'll be looking at over time as the students in the Innovation Hub actually go through their processes. We might be bringing in people to look at risk management, risk mitigation, etc. But that one, obviously, we have to understand that at times, when you invest your capital, at times you are not going to be as successful as you imagine. So there is that the inherent risk of failure. But yes, it's all about capital investment. The definitions also talk about managerial coordination. This is very critical. We cannot talk about entrepreneurship without building management capacity, because the management is very critical. It's all about bringing the resources together, directing the resources towards attainment of profit. And so we need to capacitate entrepreneurs with management abilities. So while yes, we can talk about capital investment, we can talk about looking for funding and everything else, but it's also equally important that we also look at management capability or management coordination, because entrepreneurship is about continue the existence of those businesses, and continue the existence of a business rests on management capacity, managerial ability. If managerial ability is absent, you will then find that ventures will not survive. No matter how good your idea is, no matter how good the innovation that one has actually come up with, as long as they cannot manage it, they will not be successful. So we need to build management capacity. And this is why you find some people actually very brilliant ideas, but they've not gone anywhere because of failure to manage their ventures, or because of failure to manage ventures. So we need to build management capacity. Entrepreneurship also speaks to issues of innovation. And I'll give a detailed discussion on innovation, but for now, I'll just brush through it. When you talk about innovation, there is always the misconception that some people make, that the innovation is always coming up with something, inventing. But innovation, strictly speaking, is not inventing. Innovation can also be improvements on an existing product, or improvements on an existing service. And innovation obviously goes beyond just creating value. You also want to ensure that you have commercialized. We'll talk about that later. But normally, when people talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, we think somebody must actually come up with something that is novel, something that has never been seen before. So you find people struggling and having serious challenges about, trying to come up with something novel, something that has never been seen before, something that has never been on the market before. But strictly speaking, innovation can actually be, yes, it can be a novel idea that one can actually bring about, or it could actually be improvements on existing products. So we need not confine ourselves only to to novel ideas, but we can also look at existing products, see how best we can actually improve on those ones. And then also entrepreneurship is about strategic management. And when you talk about strategic management, we are just talking about long-term survival of ventures. So managing organizations in such a way that they survive into the future. In accounting, we always talk about the business continuity concept, which says all businesses, once set up, must continue to exist. This is the whole purpose of accounting. So this is why we then do prepare our various books of accounting, with the accruals concept, where you actually are saying, yes, I can give you on credit and I'll realize myself today, because I know into the future you will still be able to pay back whatever I would have given you on credit. And also I can also still get goods and services on credit, and the assumption is I will continue to exist, and therefore I'll be able to make good my accounts. So it's the whole thing of strategic management, that without strategic management, such ventures will not be able to survive. So entrepreneurship is, you notice from this emphasis, it's not just about innovations, but entrepreneurship is about capital investment. Entrepreneurship is about management capabilities, management, talking about day-to-day management of a venture. And then also it is about strategic management, managing organizations for survival into the future, looking into the 5 years from now, where do we want to be? How do we want to be perceived? What is it that we should do in order for us to be that which we want to be known as, talking about your vision, talking about your purpose, which basically is your mission statement, your purpose. What is your purpose? So for entrepreneurs to survive, they need to have a combination of these four elements. If the 4 elements are not there, entrepreneurship will not survive. So when we look at our entrepreneurs, the team that we have actually accommodated in the Innovation Hub, we have to create that balance. They are innovative, yes. This is the reason why they've actually gone there. They are innovative people. They are people who have actually come up with very brilliant ideas that can save communities. But there's need for us to then say, how best can we look at the other 3 elements which are not present? I'm not saying which are not, but which may not be present. How do we then balance, So we have to look at how best we can also raise capital to assist them set up their ventures. Not only looking at how they raise capital, but also looking at their management abilities, capacity, and then also looking at their strategic management abilities. So when we look at an entrepreneur, there are elements that are critical in any entrepreneurship process to take place. I will use this. I'll use this one, a model which actually explains. So we have the entrepreneur at the center here, and we also have opportunity, we have organization, and we have resources. When we look at the entrepreneur, you are effectively looking at the person, the driver. So in our case, we're actually looking at our students in the Innovation Hub. Those are the entrepreneurs. But for them to be effective as entrepreneurs, they need 2 capabilities: the human capital and the social capital. Human capital, basically, we go through the learning process, university education, primary education, secondary education, etc. That gives us knowledge. So yes, we develop the human capital, i.e. we develop the knowledge in our various fields. It could be medicine, it could actually be archaeology, It gives us the drive, because it is that knowledge that we have that will help us to be creative, also to be innovative, because we are thinking within the realm of areas of experience. So the human capital, yes, it's taught where you actually go to a formal school, but human capital also is a result of our socialization, i.e. the informal knowledge that we get, when you are moving around in the rural areas, you get to know about the indigenous trees, what they help in, etc. So if you are in medicine or in pharmacy, then you can actually, that knowledge, the informal knowledge, can come back and help you identify opportunities that you can actually use to come up with innovative ideas or creative ideas that you can then use to commercialize. So the human capital is very essential. Knowledge, formal knowledge, and informal knowledge. They build us, they help us to identify opportunities. It is basically based on our human knowledge, which is the formal knowledge and the informal knowledge. We also have social capital in the entrepreneur, the networks. It's very critical. In most cases, we tend to neglect the networks, and yet it is networks that actually generate success for us. you can actually have very good ideas. You can actually have very brilliant, viable business ideas, innovative ideas, etc. But you need to be able to network with financiers. You need to be able to network with distributors, i.e., the people that are going to carry your products, the people that are going to carry your products. So without that knowledge, nowadays people talk about soft skills. Essentially, those are the social capital. It is the people that will be able to link up with, people who will actually be able to network with. Even when you talk about getting your human resources, your employees, etc., you need the social capital, because you will actually be using the social capital to help you identify. We talk about headhunting. So you need that social capital, the networks that will help you to identify the right skills and the right people, the right strings to pull, etc. It's not about corruption. It's just about being networked. So human capital and social network are very critical for the entrepreneur. Then we look at opportunity. Yes, opportunities must be available. And obviously, opportunities are a result of us understanding the market. What does the market require? What are the needs of the market? And also the opportunity also is also to do with government. When you talk about regulations, deregulating the market, deregulating the industry. Because obviously, if it's highly regulated, when you say regulation, we are actually talking about controls. If the market is highly controlled, if the industry is highly controlled, flexibility is not there. So absence of flexibility essentially means opportunities cannot be created. So you need to deregulate the market itself, deregulate the industry, so that you actually have many players coming in, many competition, a lot of competition, and it is from competition that people start to look for opportunities. But if it's highly controlled, everything is under control, everything is highly regulated, there's no need for you to look for opportunities, because you will never be allowed to identify and even exploit those opportunities. So opportunities must actually exist. And then also, like we said, you need resources, human resources, capital resources, etc. And then you need organization, i.e., have a organization, ability to organize, ability to come up with an organization that you can then manage on a daily basis. And then that organization, obviously managed well and also managed strategically, will then give us the future. But what is also critical is this environment where we are coming from, the society that we are coming from, the institutions that we have, the universities, colleges, research institutions, etc. They are also very critical. And then also the government and with its regulations. So the environment plays a very critical part to the entrepreneur, because it is the environment which is going to give us knowledge which we are going to use to be innovative, because without knowledge, you cannot be innovative. We'll talk about this later. You also need a society that is supportive of entrepreneurship, changing attitudes, becoming people who really believe that, yes, entrepreneurs or creation of enterprises is a critical element, not employment. Because if you have a society that believes, that measures success against the number of 4x4s that you have been given by your employer, measures success by the number of houses that you have been allowed by the employer to live in, a society that measures success by how much you actually ability of your employer to pay your medical bills, ability of your employer to actually give you a loan to buy a house, we can never be entrepreneurs, because we are creating a society that is dependent on employment. But if we have a society that starts to measure success by the number of ventures that you have created, the struggles that you have gone through, when you start to glorify people like Strive Masiwa, people like the Jane Mutasas, the ladies who have made it in business, the gentlemen who has actually made it in business, we make those our role models. And then once we have such kind of people as role models, society has accepted them. So we create people who also aspire, or young people who also aspire to be in business. It's the same thing now. You notice the society is glorifying, this term pinga, glorifying, these guys. You don't know where their money is coming from, but they just flash it. So you then find that, that is what we are now using as a measure of success. So we have children, youths, etc., who are always looking for dealerships, those kind of deals, etc. People looking for because those are the people that we are glorifying. So we need a society that then moves away from such kind of things, and we start to look at entrepreneurship, people who create business, people who create value, etc. And we start to glorify them. Then we'll actually be society, will be okay. And then obviously research institutions are in place, industry that is supportive of entrepreneurship. Then we will actually have entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is not a responsibility of one person. It is the responsibility of everyone, i.e. the whole community, institutions in a community. At times I even joke, that even in churches we should be talking about such kind of things. You go to Zayoja, they will tell you, no, there's no way a person can move around without money. Think about projects, think about ideas that you can go into, which will then help you to generate income. That's their thrust. And yet you go in some other churches, the thrust is going to work and then give us a tenth of your salary. Such kind of thing. So so it's all about the entire society and all the institutions, universities, research institutions, etc. Supporting entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship cannot survive on its own. Existing businesses also have to come in and support entrepreneurship, right? So we now have types of entrepreneurs. I'll just have a quick rundown here, just for us to actually understand. We have what are called habitual owners or habitual entrepreneurs. These are people who want to own business for the status that is associated with business. It's not about profit, it's not about anything, just to be known as business persons. So we have such kind of people. Obviously, entrepreneurship is driven by the profit motive. So if profit is not there, because we said entrepreneurship is about growth of capital, growth of market share, etc. So by growth, you are just talking about profitability. So if one is not concerned with profit, but only concerned with owning businesses, owning ventures, etc., that basically is a wrong type of entrepreneurship. But we do have them. Then we have growth entrepreneurs. These guys are entrepreneurs who seek to leave a legacy. You look at the Indian communities, you look at the Jewish communities, etc. It's also now emerging in a few of our Zimbabwean blacks, that is Zimbabwean blacks. It's also now emerging amongst some, you look at Anastrive Masiwa, but these are guys that would want to leave a legacy. So, they all, even the human capital, when they develop their children, their human capital is actually focused on coming in and working and contributing to the venture. So when you look at the Indian community, the father is a medical doctor. They will make sure that all their children are also medical doctors, and they will come and work in the venture that is actually being established. So right from the very early ages, they're exposed to such kind of things. And that's basically what we call growth entrepreneurs. They are looking for success and would want to leave legacies that will actually be become part of the family inheritance. Then we also have harvest entrepreneurs. I think you can put Nigel Chanakira in that category. These are people who start ventures, very viable ventures, very successful ventures, managed well and everything else. But they do it for purposes of creating wealth and then quickly exit, start another venture, exit, start another venture. So they are always starting ventures, creating value. When the stocks value of their stocks has gone up, they then sell that venture, rake in billions of dollars and start another venture, So for them, the idea is always to find new ventures to go into and sell them off, selling them off when they've actually created value, not selling them off because they are failures, but selling them off because they have created a value. They can actually sell off, or at times they can actually give shares to others, and they maybe become minority shareholders, but start another venture, etc. And then we have helical or spiral entrepreneurs. These start ventures mainly for purposes of subsidizing their income. So they realize maybe the salary that they are getting is not enough or is not adequate for now. So they start a venture. When the salary has gone up, they abandon the venture. then, wait for another cycle. When they feel salary is not adequate, they go back into the venture. When the salary is okay, so they alternate between growth and stability. When stable, when period is stable, they pursue employment career. When things are bad, they then start those ventures. And then we also have occasional entrepreneurs. These are guys who run side businesses, side ventures, but they pursue their jobs, but they have a side business that they're actually running. And then we also have social entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs, basically, these are worried about society. So they would want to create value for society. For them, the profit is not the major motive, but to see a society that is actually improved, that is actually a better living standards, such kind of things. So those are social entrepreneurs. And then we also have what are called corporate entrepreneurs. These are people who are in an organization already employed, but they lack the guts to go out and start their own ventures. So they start to use their ideas to provide new ideas, rejuvenate the company that they are working for, the business that they are working for, the organization that they are working for. So they are always coming up with ideas, very brilliant ideas, viable, but these ideas, instead of them implementing them, they are doing it on behalf of the organizations that employ them. So obviously, the only thing that they get is recognition. You get a promotion here and there, you get a company car, or at times you are made CEO of that venture that you have started. But obviously you are still employed. At the end of 5-10 years, the guy can still decide to say, no, we have had enough of your services, so please go. So you just leave as a person with nothing, perhaps your shirt, your jacket, and and maybe some few memories about what it was like in that organization. So those are corporate entrepreneurs. We have them. But in our case, I think our emphasis basically is not even on social entrepreneurs, but we are looking at growth entrepreneurs, people who will actually create ventures that will leave a legacy and will continue to exist, right? So if we are looking at such kind of people who are growth entrepreneurs, what does it mean? It means we have to look at innovation and what innovation is, because that is the only way we can create these growth entrepreneurs. We are not looking at any other entrepreneur, but we are looking at growth entrepreneurs. So when we look at growth entrepreneurs, we are saying what they have to be innovative for their own benefit, innovative for their own benefit rather than for companies that they work for, or their employers, or maybe for society alone. Not to say that focusing on society is wrong or bad, but you are saying yes, we also need to improve our societies. But growth entrepreneurs will improve society through making a profit, and that is a result of innovation. So when you talk to people about innovation, you'll find that there is a lot of definitions that come up. Some people consider innovation as creativity. Others look at, just hold, let me close my door. Sorry, Mr. Masiga. Thanks. Sorry about that. I'm using the boardroom here, so people come in. Right. So people talk about innovation as creativity. Some will look at innovation as coming up with new products or services. Others will look at entrepreneurship as innovation as entrepreneurship, being entrepreneurial, those are 4 elements that we spoke about. And then also some talk about the innovation as coming up with new designs. Others talk about coming up with inventions. So like I was saying, those definitions are okay, but the problem is they're just talking about one aspect of innovation. Innovation is everything that we are talking about. So this is why we say, yes, you are focusing on outcomes of innovation. Yes, when we talk about being creative, creativity itself is an outcome of innovation. So innovation is some process that we actually have to go through until we get to creativity, until we get to a new product, until we get to a new innovation. So I don't want to spend a lot of time looking at the technicalities and the academic arguments that we can actually present for innovation. But innovation, strictly speaking, is not a single action, but a total process of interrelated sub-processes. It is not just the conception of an idea, nor the invention of a new device, nor the development of a new market. All these that we are talking about here constitute what is referred to as innovation. And that's according to Mayers and Marquis. But we will notice as we'll be discussing that, yes, this is all about innovation when we talk about innovation. So when we talk about, like I was saying earlier, when we talk about new, when we say innovation is about coming up with new products or new whatever, new is relative. So we should never look at new in absolute terms. That is something that is novel. No, it's not always like that. Yes, we accept if you come up with something that is novel, it's okay. But concept of new is always relative. You know, you are taking something that has not been present in a market and you are taking it to that market. We talk about Strive Masiwa as being an entrepreneur, but what did Strive do? What Strive did was to take the mobile phone technology in Sweden and brought it to Zimbabwe, where it had never been experienced before. So in that way, he was innovative, but he never created anything. We talk today about the Econet being an innovative organization because they brought in the concept of money transfers, your EcoCash. But that was an idea that was already in existence in Kenya, M-Pesa. But he just brought that whole thing and called it EcoCash in Zimbabwe, you know, just to suit the environment. So that's innovation. So it's not always, so it's a new product, but the thing is it's relatively new because it's new to us in Zimbabwe. We had never been exposed to it, whereas in all other areas it has been there. You know, package farming news and send them through Eco Farmer. You know, things that have always been there. We have this magazine, farming runner, the late Gary Magazine, you know, for small miners, you know, sorry, not miners, for people who are in agriculture, the small scale miners. We also have that report also from Commercial Farmers Union. So what he just did was to just take it and then put it in an electric form and start to distribute it via Eco Farmer, you know, identify the markets, products that are required. You know, things that would actually have, if they were being published, could actually take a month before that information. But here now he's actually just making that information available readily, you know, in time, on you know, in real time. So that's basically what innovation is. So innovation is not always about new is not always about a novel, but it's all to do with a relativity that, yes, it all depends with the markets that you have actually gone into, right? Right. And then obviously invention is translating intellectual thoughts into an artifact. So this is what we're actually saying. The starting point is knowledge. And then we apply that knowledge to develop a product. You know, we always talk about a vacuum cleaner. It's basically people in physics who talked about a creation of a vacuum. That is, if you create a vacuum, we are creating a space which is not occupied by anything. And so this is the concept of the vacuum cleaner, because then you actually are creating vacuum to be able to suck the dust or dirt, whatever, on carpets, from carpets and whatever else, you know. It's that concept, you know. So it starts with knowledge. Without knowledge of physics and knowledge of a vacuum, the vacuum cleaner would never have been there. The vacuum cleaner would actually not have been there. So this is the importance of innovation. That, you know, when you talk about innovation, the starting point is building knowledge. And it's very fortunate that now we have taken 5.0 now, which is now saying, yes, build knowledge, but then apply it, you know. That's how we create entrepreneurs, and also that's how we also create innovation. So without knowledge, so we need to really engage in a lot of research so that we build knowledge, and with that knowledge we can then use that knowledge to then develop our tangible. So yes, we talk about our physics, we talk about our chemistry, we talk about our biology, you know. because this is that those are the roots, or those are the underpinning elements of science. Engineers only borrow ideas from sciences. The guys physics would actually talk about waves, talk about waves and uses of waves, and then obviously engineers can then design a radio which is able to receive the waves. But the people who have actually talked about waves and how they can actually be created are people from physics. So we need those sciences, to actually look at research and development. And then obviously we know from that we can then start talking about application of that knowledge, into the various areas that we actually use. So knowledge is basically what you are saying is that we need knowledge in order for us to be successful in innovation. So innovation basically is theoretical conception, which is basically our knowledge that we create, the knowledge base that we create. And then that knowledge is translated into a technical invention. And then at the end of the day, we then commercialize that invention that would have been created. So if those three elements are there, then we talk about innovation. We cannot talk about innovation if it's just theoretical conception. Theoretical conception is creativity. That's creativity. And then the technical invention, yes, that could actually be just a process of producing samples, or yes, these are just samples that you are producing, or prototypes. Yes, we normally use the word prototypes. You're just producing prototypes. But once the prototypes now have actually been, we get to the stage of commercializing them. So if those three are in place, then we are now talking about innovation. We would have a full cycle of innovation. So this is basically what is happening in the innovation hub. There is that theoretical conception, the knowledge that has been built through our learning process, the human capital that we're talking about. And then obviously we have invented some prototypes, and now what we are now working on is commercial exploitation of those inventions, or of those technical inventions. That's what we are now talking about. And that's basically now where we are now saying, let's now go into the hub and see how best we can assist this person to commercialize their inventions, right? So like we said, creativity, innovation is an element of creativity. You cannot talk about innovation before we even talk about creativity, because creativity is that process that helps us to exploit opportunities. So the first thing that we'll remember, that model that we're talking about, that yes, you start with the entrepreneur and then you also have a opportunity. So opportunities have to exist. And when you talk about opportunities, we are effectively talking about gaps in the market. The simple term that any common man uses for gaps is problems. Because a gap or a problem is the difference between what you desire and what you have. What you have and what you aspire for. The difference between what you aspire for, what you have, and what you aspire for is a gap. And that's the problem. So the thing is, entrepreneurs must identify those problems, or we call them gaps. Yes, identify those problems. In marketing, the problems will be called market needs. So marketing says, no, identify market needs, identify the needs of the market. But what we're only saying is identify gaps in the market, identify problems. The common man would say, no, there are problems. Identify problems in the market. And once you've identified problems, creativity must now kick in to say, how can that problem be solved? How can that market need be solved? Because the unfortunate part about markets or customers, you and me, we never articulate what we want. We never articulate, but we articulate the problems that we have. So the market will never tell you, produce a motor vehicle for me, or produce a Mercedes-Benz for me, or produce a Toyota Hilux for me. No, the market will never say that. But the market will tell you that, I have this car, it's a Guzzler, it's a fuel Guzzler. It's a fuel Guzzler. So what this person is saying is, if I could find a solution which is still going to drive me from point A to point B, but without consuming fuel like I want. So entrepreneurs will then start to think about a fuel saver. How can we then look at the carburetor itself? It's not all about coming up with a new car. You can just look at the carburetor, look at the whole process of injection and everything else, and you come up with your own product or your innovation, because you are now selling it. We are now calling it innovation because we are now going to be selling it. But the process starts with creativity. How can I come up with this carburetor that saves fuel? How can I come up with a way of reducing fuel consumption? So some will actually talk about designing of a vehicle. So you notice entrepreneurship can actually take place on one vehicle, one opportunity, fuel guzzler. We can come up with so many ideas of solving that problem. It could be the shape of the motor vehicle itself. You move away from, I'm not very good at physics, but they'll talk about aerodynamics, that you need a certain shape which is actually able to cut resistance, because when you are in motion, it's all about the air actually resisting. So what is it that you need to do in order for you to cut resistance? Because the more you cut resistance, obviously the less fuel you will actually use. So it's those things. So creativity itself is a prerequisite for innovation to take place, because you actually are looking at possible ways of solving a problem. So this is what I have. This is a very long definition by Jalan and Kleiner, but basically it says you need to identify deficiencies and then come up with ways of solving those deficiencies. You create your hypotheses, you test them until you then come up with the solution. So innovation is anchored on creativity, but obviously creativity is also anchored on the human capital, i.e. your knowledge. You cannot conceptualize something that you don't know. So the more knowledge you build for yourself, both formal knowledge and informal knowledge, the better for you in terms of creativity. It's better for you for creativity, So this is why at times, I always joke about this thing when you look at some, parents, very conservative, your child must not play, the madaka, So effectively, we are killing creativity, because what we are doing is we are reducing the knowledge of that child. So the more we expose them, obviously we are saying no, as long as they don't harm themselves. But the more they actually venture out, the more they experiment, the more informal knowledge that they build. And when it comes to creativity, this is how in our ages we would actually come up with wire motor vehicles. We would actually come up with clay cars, where you'd actually even come up with wheels, etc. It's all about creativity. You are exposed. But nowadays, we want to buy the PlayStation. Fine, it's good. But we're killing creativity, because you cannot just stay indoors. You need to be a person who has a wider knowledge base, which is not only created by formal education, but can also be created by the informal education. So basically, you're saying, yes, creativity is just about identifying problems and then transforming the gaps into a business opportunity. Like we're saying, motor, guzzler, fuel, and then find what is it that we can do, talk about your carburetors, talk about your shape, etc. And then once you have done that, once you have that idea, you then must go out and carry out a feasibility study, which basically says to what extent can you commercialize that idea. So innovation would then require that we carry out our feasibility studies. So it's good while we are in the innovation hub to be creating the prototypes and everything else. But let's not forget the concept of feasibility studies, because you want to assess to what extent the product will be commercially viable. Because that's what will then define commercial viability or commercial success of an innovation. Innovation success for any innovations are measured in two dimensions. Number one, is it serving purpose? That's one dimension. So you can innovate and come up with something that will serve its purpose. For instance, you look at the power bank that was developed. Yes, it was successful because it served the purpose of storing energy that you can then use on your cell phones. But was it commercially successful? It's another way of measuring an innovation. It was not commercially viable, or it was not commercially successful, except when you look at markets like ours in Zimbabwe, where perhaps we have more power outages, etc. But in countries where power is not, is a scarce commodity, why would one buy a power bank? In fact, when you get to those advanced economies, you actually find places where, at any place, any public place, you can actually find a place where you can charge your phone, etc. So they don't need any power banks. If they need them, very little demand for power banks. So that innovation, in terms of an innovation, is good for purpose. Yes, it was successful, but commercially, it was not that successful. So when we look at innovations, this is why we need to then do feasibility studies, unless we just are satisfied with the one dimension, i.e., is it serving purpose? But entrepreneurs must not just focus on serving purpose, because entrepreneurship is about growth. So it's about profitability, etc. So we also need to look at commercial viability. So at times you hear people saying, no, this innovation was not successful. They need to qualify. What are you saying? Are you saying it was not good for purpose? Because it was successful in that regard. But at times it could actually have been commercially unsuccessful because it did not achieve the commercial success that we envisaged, or what entrepreneurs envisaged. What I have here is just a list of forms of creativity, because at times you hear people saying, no, creativity is something that is difficult, because we always think creativity along my lines of products, coming up with a tangible product. But creativity, all of us are creative. Some people are good at coming up with ideas, very good with coming up with ideas, but not doing anything. They can tell you so many ideas, so many brilliant ideas. No, this whole concept of Zumban, all those kind of things. I've tried it, but it just ends there. So it's people who are capable of coming up with ideas, but never implement them. Then we also have material creativity. Some people who are good at inventing. So you notice, if we combine forces, an person who is very creative in terms of ideas, and we combine them with a person who has material creativity, you find that will be successful. This guy just generates ideas. This guy turns ideas into what? Into tangibles. And then we also have organization creativity. People are just good at organizing events. So such kind of people, organizing. So we have people who have now gone into events management. Basically, these are people who are just good at organizing. But it's just that it's only recently that locals have actually find that you can actually commercialize your ability to organize. So even the idea creativity people can actually just be people who just give ideas, sell ideas, just selling ideas. It's still part of commercializing. It's still being innovative also. Anyway, because innovation is about commercializing. So once you start commercializing, you're good to go. We also have people who are very good at creating relationships. Nowadays, we talk about customer relationship management, Vanyai. Those are kind of, you can actually commercialize Vanyai every time, because you are good at creating relationships. You know how to interact, you know how to deal with people, etc. So what we are only trying to say is that creativity takes so many dimensions. It's just that at times we don't take time to actually look at our creativity and then know that we are creative in that area, and then say to ourselves, how best can we innovate, commercialize this ability. So like we say, yes, spontaneous creativity, people who are, these are the guys who have now turned into stand-up comedians. They are very creative. The guy is sitting down blank in his mind, but when you ask him to say something, they will definitely come up with a brilliant saying, or brilliant sayings, or brilliant speech that they will come thinking on their feet. So that's spontaneous creativity. And then we also have inner creativity. People who are just able to cancel, they transform yourself. So what these slides are just saying is that, yes, they were speaking to is issues of creativity. That creativity is broad. It's not a narrow thing. It's not a narrow activity, but it is a very broad activity. So, and then when you talk about innovation now, we are now saying, after creativity, the next thing is go into commercializing the ideas. Now go into commercializing the ideas. You look at the Wright brothers, they had the ideas of how to fly, but they failed to commercialize it. Taken up by Boeing, taken up by Boeing. And Boeing is actually now making money out of that idea that the Wright brothers brought about. Same thing with the
we have some
gentleman.
lesson global and multi-sectoral cooperation, equitable, resilient.
Sorry, somebody's talking. Should people mute your mics. Sorry, Doc.
No, thank you very much. Yes, so I was saying, you talk about the guy who discovered the telephone. He never commercialized it. He was just creative. And then, Philips came in, the other guys, now they are making money out of the ideas. So what I'm trying to say is, let's not just be creative, but let's commercialize. Let's go all the way to innovation, where we actually start to get revenues and profit or growth from the ideas. Right. So innovation, like we said, it's finding new and better ways of doing things that are commercialized. You are just commercializing. So you can look at, this is where we're talking about that the new concept of new is relative. You can develop new products for existing markets, where you actually are innovating and coming up with novel products because they've never been in that market before. So that's one way. Or you can actually develop new markets for existing products. I mean, the example of Strive Masiwa that I was actually alluded to earlier, where he just came up with an idea that was very popular in the West and countries, the cell phone, brought it into Zimbabwe, which is a new market for a product that was already in existence elsewhere. Or we can actually develop new products for new markets. Yes, we can actually develop new products for new markets, come up with a novel products and take those novel products to areas that they had never been taken to before. And just to try and put it into context is the motor vehicle by Mr. Ford. It was a new product and taken into a new market, the market of people who wanted to use vehicles, because initially they were using bicycles, etc. So you have this concept. So that's the concept of new product. And then also coming up with new possibilities for design of an existing product. So what I'm only saying is, when we are in our innovation hub and we are looking at our or maybe the process of selecting the participants, looking at people who qualify, or even the guys that have been very fortunate, very lucky to be selected, very privileged to be selected to be the pioneers in the innovation hub, if you were looking at innovation of an existing product, where you are looking at designing or improving existing products, you still are innovative. So you cannot look down upon your own innovation. Even if you are now developing a new product for a new market, obviously you also have actually innovated. But the only challenge that you will have, obviously, because this is a new product you are taking into a new market, generally people are skeptical about products. So you'd need to then look at your marketing abilities, the management aspect that we're looking at. So we should not be worried about whether this is new or this is not new. But we actually are only saying is, yes, firstly, is it good for purpose? Will it actually meet its purpose? And then secondly, are we going to make it a commercial success? If those two criteria are met, then it's good. It's an innovation. Let's run with it.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously, when you talk about forces of innovation, I think I'm actually coming to the end of my presentation. Right, yes. Why do we need innovation? What is it that is driving innovation? Obviously, the new technologies that are coming up. And obviously, new technologies are a result of the knowledge that we have built. So the more knowledge we build, the more new technologies that we actually come up with. The more knowledge we built has actually ended up with us with cell phones. The knowledge we have actually accumulated over a period of time is actually materialized these Zoom meetings that we actually are having, which is actually an innovation. So the more technologies we build, based on the knowledge that we have created, the more innovations will actually come in. So my emphasis really, you notice, it's always on research, because that is the only way we can build knowledge, right? And also, obviously, our customers are also changing, their needs are changing, i.e. their problems are changing, or gaps are actually emerging in the market. So those gaps need to be filled. So the idea is for us, if we want to be innovative, want to be successful commercially, is to always be on the lookout of problems that societies are encountering. So we need to keep our ears on the ground to get to know what problems are actually being encountered. You know, I always give this example of the pharmaceuticals, BP medication or whatever medication, you know, TB medication, etc. You know, you are expected to take maybe 2, 3, 4, 12 tablets at one go, you know. So others are now innovating, and actually coming up with perhaps one tablet that contains maybe 2 or 3 elements, you know. So instead of taking 12 tablets, you end up taking 4 tablets, or perhaps even taking 4 tablets, you end up taking one tablet. Because obviously the person is actually saying, no, you know, when you talk to the market, it's telling you, BP I'm going on it. I actually have to drink 4 tablets, you know, and it's a problem, you know, so it has all those kind of things, you know. If we keep our ears to the ground, if we keep our ears also interacting with their distributors, pharmacists, etc., we will be able to get these problems, and then we can then innovate to say how best can we, or creative thinking, how best can we solve that problem, and then go further to create prototypes and then test the market for such kind of things. So what I'm only saying is there's need for us to be always keeping our ears on the ground to actually see the developments that are taking place within the markets, identify gaps or problems that the market is experiencing. Like I said, the market will never tell you the product that it wants, because we don't know what we want, but we know the problems that we have. So we will always articulate them. Ndine sipo inokurumbidza kupera, sipo iri kundipedzera mari, 2 days yapera, 3 days yapera. So somebody comes up with sauna, that your huge bar, you know, or comes up with your geisha, or comes up with your jade. Yeah, so you know, that's the innovation. But nobody will ever tell you no to jade, never gadzira jade. They will not tell you that, but they will tell you problems. Budget rangu kupera, sipo iri kukurumbidza kupera kumba and everything else. So the market will never tell you what it wants, but the market will always inundate you with the problems that they are faced with, and they would expect you to then, if you're an entrepreneur, to then come up with solutions, you know, through your creativity, through your knowledge that you have, you know, and then you can then go in and come up with new products. Obviously, new markets are emerging, new industries are emerging, and they are providing opportunities. So obviously, you know, I always like these small guys, you know, who have actually, you know, the cell phone, you know, importing cell phones, use the cell phones, and these guys tell you, know, we flash it, you know. So it's an industry that has emerged, you know, where people just do the flashing of phones, you know, unlocking of blocked phones, etc. So it becomes another service sector that is actually emerged, but it has emerged because of the cell phone. But obviously, I'm not advocating for unethical behavior, but we are only saying, yes, you can also find such kind of opportunities through I like the young people from our computer programs, you know. Gambling at one point, it was just you have to physically go there, but these young men actually came up with a software where you can actually gamble online. You know, these are the kind of things that we are talking about, where you're actually looking at emerging industries and then seeing how best you can actually exploit opportunities there. But you notice you need to have that knowledge. You need to keep your mind very sharp in terms of creativity, etc. And then also the costs of inputs are actually always going up, you know, and because of that, people are actually looking at how best we can actually cut costs. So that now pushes for process re-engineering or process innovations, and then also changes in government's regulations. As governments deregulate, as governments deregulate, opportunities arise. You know, we started to recognize small-scale miners, you know, the guys that we used to call makorokoza. Now we have a new term for them, where we actually are now calling them artisanal miners. But obviously, some people have actually made money out of it, creating Mastempen mills, which they actually mobile ones that you can actually take from one place to another, you know, and these guys actually mill their gold, crush their various ores. So it's all about looking at such kind of things. So it's all about keeping our minds open, and also trying to find what are the problems that people have, and then being creative, really going out of our way, thinking creatively. Because the problem with creative thinking is at times we think these people are mad, or when they make their ideas, the society has taught us to be judgmental. And because of our this whole concept of being judgmental, we have discouraged entrepreneurship. We have discouraged people from being innovative. We have discouraged people from then being creative, because we label them. That's a crazy idea. And yet, these are things that actually will happen. I remember one day talking to a young man, very young, I think. He was 8, not even 8, he was 6 then, 5 or 6. And I was saying to him, but where are you coming from? So he actually was eating some pie, and he was saying, no, I had accompanied my mother to pick up my brother. And but the problem is thieves, car thieves, So I was saying to my mother, can't you get a pin code for your vehicle? Get a pin code for your vehicle. And if you get a pin code for your vehicle, then that vehicle will not be stolen. It sounded very crazy, but nowadays we actually have people who now have motor vehicles where you can actually use your thumb for opening. It's the concept of a pin code, but how are you using the pin code? It's just that somebody has taken that concept of a pin code, and you have found ways of making it what obviously you can actually have a motor vehicle the way you actually open it with a pin codes, whatever. You can do it. It's possible. But the thing is, we are judgmental. We say as written. That's a crazy idea. And yet they are also very, very creative, those kind of things. Right. So yes, changes in government regulations. Yes, keeping our minds and being creative. And then obviously this is essentially speaking to issues to do with the process of coming up with ideas, but I think the most important thing really is for us is to be aware of what makes successful ideas, what we call successful ideas. Successful ideas, obviously, that's the criteria of measuring the success of your ideas, right? As long as whatever you're coming up with is advantage over existing products, you'll be successful. So you don't have to copy what is already in the market, because you might not be successful. Come up with something that is a relative advantage over whatever is. Customers will switch on to it because you are talking about its advantages, And then also it should be compatible. I mean, this is all about being ethical. Ideas, while we are being creative and everything else, we must remain ethical. Otherwise, we lose it. And then those ideas should be simple to understand, because a customer is going to be using that product. So you don't want something that is sophisticated, complicated, because then the customer will not be able to use it. It's the same concept of Microsoft, when they developed that software, Vista, which was difficult to actually use. It was never successful. I think they even quickly withdrew it from the market because they realized that it was too sophisticated. So because customers, they have problems, but they are not looking for complicated solutions. So it should be simple, something that they can actually use. And then also we should actually find it easy to communicate the benefits of that the idea that we would actually have come up with. And then also we should be, we will test my prototypes. So those prototypes should actually not harm people when we do the sampling, when we are doing my samples and market testing the samples. They should not injure or cause harm to the customers. Otherwise, when you come back, you'll definitely find that nobody will want your product because you have already ruined your reputation at the trial stage. So we must be very confident that this product will not cause any harm or injury to the customers. And then also whatever idea that we are coming up should be readily available. If we are going to then commercialize it, customers should actually be able to access it easily without any challenges. And then also the product, not the person. The product itself should convince that the buyer that their needs are being satisfied, not what somebody is going to be saying to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, it might have taken long, but I hope it was making sense. Thank you very much for the time. So I hand over to Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you very much, Doc. Madam Chair has been called in for another meeting during your presentation. So what I'll do is I'll just take it up from where she had left. That was very insightful. I think for some of us who come from the other side of the university, we learned a lot. We learned a lot. Thank you very much, Doc. Thank you very much. I especially liked, the way that you broke down what innovation is and what creativity is and all the processes around it. I'm sure it's really going to help the students, going to help even some of our staff who are working with these students, so that at least we have a proper channeling of what exactly it is that we seek to be doing. So what I'll do is I'll open it up to questions. Is there anyone with a reaction? Anyone with a question? Anyone with a reaction? Anyone with a question? Any reactions, questions, or comments?
Mine is just, this was amazing. Thanks, Doc. Ideas are coming through.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Yeah. How are you, Prof?
Fine, thank you.
All right, thanks, Prof. Anyone with a reaction, comment, or question? Right, it seems it was very thorough, very, very thorough. We were taking notes, so we will try to implement what we have learned. Again, thank you very much, Doc. We really learned a lot. I think by this we will end the meeting.
No, thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity. I just hope people benefited. I think that's the most important thing.
Indeed, you benefited, Doc. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Right.